Center, and I bring in my guests this morning, Homa Bay Town Member of Parliament Peter Kaluma and Soi MP Caleb Kositany, both of them joining us from Masete Center Studios. And just before I bring in Honorable Kositany, Honorable Peter Kaluma, why now? Why bring this bill now? Yet, of course, the argument would be because of the negative political talks the country has been witnessing for the better part of this year. But this has always been has always been thin in the past years. But why bring this bill right now?
Yes, Brenda, I did mention that the proposal we are thinking about has not been translated into a bill. I also did say that this matter has been under discussion for over, 1 year. And by the way, it is something coming from the National Cohesion and Integration Commission as a request. And I think I've mentioned two issues which would answer your question. You would agree with me, and Kenyans, I think, will agree, that the number of convictions on hate speech has been very limited. You will also agree with me that even in those minimal cases where there has been conviction, the punishment regime has been very low. And that is why people have been saying that NCIC has no teeth. You've seen cases where NCIC is summoning people engaged in hate speech, especially leaders, and they just refuse to go, to NCIC. Now, these are the gaps in law which NCIC has been pushing us as the departmental committee concerned to help them around. As I've said, Brenda, there is nowhere in the legislative proposal where I've seen the mention of this thing called ASLA. And that is why I should assuage the feeling of my brother Kositany and his group that really, under our constitution and law, you may call yourself a murderer, but we will not have any problem with you if you don't murder anybody. You may in public or in private call yourself a thief. We have no problem with you. The right of association, the freedom of speech are guarded. This law is not being made for whatever they are calling themselves, ASLA or whatever. Right. We are looking at a law that can secure that we are stable as a country. And I think there is this creation that there is some, dealing with Kositany and his team is a political process. Right. And maybe assure them we are least bothered about them. We cannot be making law to deal with them. We'll deal with them in the field when the time for politics comes.
All right. I'd really like to hear what Honorable Kositany has to say about that statement. But Honorable Kositany, as you respond to what Honorable Kaluma has said, the DP has been out there talking about the hustler narrative, and you've put it very well, that talking about the hustler nation is not about just the people who are trying to make all ends meet, but people who've risen from nothing to something. And why can't the Deputy President, that is Honorable William Ruto, implement what he has been talking about, while he's still in government, instead of waiting until when he's elected in 2022?
Well, you see, Brenda, when we voted in 2013 and 2017, we voted for the presidency. But the CEO of the country is President Uhuru Kenyatta. He is the one who calls the shots. He is the one who sets his priorities right, and his priorities are given the service and the priority that it deserves, being the president, and especially now that his term is coming to an end. So William Ruto does what the president directs him to do. He doesn't call the shots. And even if he gives his proposals and the president gives a proposal, then the president's proposal takes precedence over what the deputy president has created. So what we are saying now is that we have come this far as a country. We now need to move to the next stage. What actually the DP is preparing is he's actually giving his manifesto that his regime is going to be a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach. But and I think that is what is for the DP to implement that, he needs to be the CEO. Right now, President Uhuru Kenyatta's main agenda is the Big Four. Yes, the president's main agenda is BBI. But the president's main agenda is many other things. So
Yes,
Yes.
as much as, allow me to cut you short, as much as you're saying the president is the CEO, which is a fact, he implements what he needs, is fit for the country, the deputy president deputizes the president, then why can't he give this proposal that he's talking about right now to the president so that it can be implemented for Kenyans who are trying to make all ends meet?
I've told you, I've just said that, Brenda, maybe you didn't hear me. The president has other major priorities that are very key to him. And that is BBI, that has clouded over many things that we would have done as a Jubilee government. So we as a team, we have decided that we will plan and tell people, Kenyans, what we will do in 2022, if God willing, we win that election. So right now, we will just sit and watch as BBI unfolds, because that is not part of our agenda. BBI was never part of the Jubilee manifesto. Mm-hmm. We have even abandoned the Big Four, which was a very good idea. And that is where we would have all put in our minds together to drive that. Mm-hmm. I just wish we had put in the same energy on the Big Four like the energy that we are putting in the BBI. But unfortunately, and that is the truth of the matter, mm-hmm. is the person who calls the shot is President Uhuru Kenyatta. He has called the shots now. BBI is on top of the desk.
So, Honorable Kositany, would that be the same answer you'd give me when I ask you about the double-digit growth that the Deputy President talked about when they were wooing the supporters to vote for them? Because 8 years down the line, what has changed from the digital government, double-digit growth, employment for the young people, to now this hustler narrative?
You see, Brenda, when we came in as Jubilee, first of all, the handshake was never part of our manifesto. It was not even in our agenda. And if you were to look at the track record of Jubilee pre-handshake 2013 to 2017, we had a fantastic growth in development. Up to today, we have done 7,000 kilometers of tarmac. And up since independence for the first 50 years, we did 10,000 kilometers. In the 8 years of the Jubilee administration, we have done 7,000 kilometers. We have connected more than 5 million Kenyans to the national grid. Even people in grass-thatched houses have now electricity in their houses. That is the kind of work we did. But then once the handshake came in, mm-hmm. then the Big Four agenda got shelved. We started discussing about changing the constitution. We started discussing BBI matters. We saw a lot of arrogance come in, a lot of intolerance come in, a lot of purging going on within the Jubilee party, remove so and so because he's not a yes person, right. Or a lady. They are not singing to the tune. So really, we lost track as Jubilee, and we need then to get back. If we are to get back on track, we should fast track this BBI process so that we are done with it. And with a little time remaining, we see whether we can salvage whatever we can with a little time remaining.
So, Honorable Kaluma, I don't know what your response would be to what Kositany said, because this handshake was between the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, and your party leader, Raila Odinga. Why does it seem, you know, from the other side of the Tanga wing, as if the Swahili people would say ODM came in and walisambaratisha nyumba ya Jubilee?
You see, what is happening in Jubilee is only happening in Kenya. Brenda, there is nowhere in the world where a deputy president, who should be the principal assistant of the president, takes a position against him and goes publicly to say is no longer willing to assist the president. And I think the deputy president is very lucky, one, because of our constitution, but number two, because the president to me is too good. If I were the president, I would have sacked him, and I imagine he would be somewhere in courts asking courts to interpret whether the president can sack the deputy president under the constitution. You cannot have this level of disrespect for your boss. You cannot have this level of dishonesty and hypocrisy being manifested by our deputy president against President Uhuru Kenyatta. I mean, look, Brenda, when we came from the last elections, for a whole year, nothing was happening in the country. Remember the tear gas in the country. Remember the resistance and the disunity that was defining in our country. How would you realize Agenda 4 in that environment? And how can Caleb honestly face Kenyans and argue that the handshake between Prime Minister Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, which is to stabilize the country for meaningful development to take place is the cause of the problem in Jubilee. Let me be forthright. The problem we have in Jubilee is that they took so much in foreign and domestic debts in the first term to do most of the things they claim they are doing. And of course, a lot was happening, but they put us in a situation where all the revenue we collect goes into servicing debts. That is the situation we have. And you remember also, Brenda, that the president said the other day that we are losing 2 billion per day. This is not a revelation by the president. The Auditor General confirms each year that we are losing at least a third of our budget to corruption. And you know what has been happening. You have projects funded through foreign debt, but this team now telling us they are doling out wheelbarrows who are taking a huge sum of those monies in corruption practices. You have not forgotten the dam. You have not forgotten this other scandal. So it is dishonest.
I've had you. Honorable Kaluma, then why fear the hustler narrative that every common Mwananchi or Wanjiko relates well with?
I don't know where you get this idea that we fear the hustler narrative from. Where is it coming from? I can tell you when it comes to the time to play politics, the deputy president and his team, whether he calls them hustlers or not, will be very small for us to deal with. Brenda, let me tell you, the hypocrisy in the wing of my brother Kositany is even manifest in their use of the term hustler. I mean, ask Kositany if he's a hustler by any definition. Ask Deputy President whether he's a hustler by any definition. No, those people they are walking around with. These are jokes we will address our people on when our time to campaign starts. And I can assure you, Brenda, that contrary to this thing being peddled that we fear the use of the hustler, I mean, I've just said before that they can use it. We'll deal with it at the right time.
All right, so Honorable Kositany, you've heard it from Kaluma saying that they don't fear the hustler nation narrative. So when you're selling this hustler nation narrative, that the bill that has been crafted by the National Assembly Security Committee tries sort of to curtail it as a way of bringing sobriety into the country, then would you agree that this has actually divided the country, the hustlers versus the dynasties?
Well, Brenda, what the hustler narrative has managed to achieve is something that we have been trying, that we tried to cure by folding up URP and TNA and forming the Jubilee Party, where we wanted to get rid of tribal parties and tribal kings. But somewhere along the way, we seem to be headed back to the tribal kingdom theory. But the hustler nation narrative has actually managed to cure the problem of tribalism that we have, because we are now discussing our issues, our hustles as Kenyans. As every Kenyan is discussing how he's going to make ends meet, how he's going to feed his family, how he's going to pay school fees, how he's going to make ends meet. And we are happy, and we actually said it one time during one of our functions, that we must change the narrative of how we discuss things in this nation, and we are happy that whenever any leader, any leader, from the president, the former prime minister, and all, whenever they speak, they have to mention the wheelbarrow, they have to mention the hustler movement, even if they mention it in the negative. That is a clear indication that the narrative has changed, and the discussion now is about the common Mwananchi, how we're going to empower that person and bring them, make sure that the decisions we make, even in government, even when we're in the budget-making process, are decisions that we'll make that will get hold of these young people who are jobless and are almost despairing.
So, gentlemen, I need to take a short commercial break because we are actually winding up this conversation. So at that point, I'd like to say asante sana for talking to us here on KTN News Center this morning. Honourable Member of Parliament for Soi, Caleb Kositany, asante sana, and also Homa Bay Town Member of Parliament, Peter Kaluma. Thank you once again for joining us here on KTN News Center. A short commercial break. I'll be right back with more Making the Headlines.